Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. On this episode, we have on John Sorsby, who is currently traveling to every state park in Texas within the year, and I think he's at 50-something out of 88. So he had a bunch of cool information and fun stories along the way. He's also, as he's going to these different towns, talking a lot about the history of some really unique things. So we had a lot of fun talking, and hope y'all enjoy. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Rambler Sparkling Water. Thank you as always. Are you double fisting Ramblers right now?
I don't want to have to get up.
I'm not surprised at all.
I gotta have it.
Yeah, you're an addict at this stuff.
They're great.
They are great. So, John, thank you for coming on today. Appreciate it. So
Appreciate
tell
it.
us, you are traveling to every Texas state park right now. And I think I checked last time I saw you were around like 50 or so. And I think there's
52 right now.
52. And how many are there total?
Well, 88 is the count I'm going off of right now. It's they're always kind of like opening and closing. So you look different places, you'll see a different number. But Palo Pinto is the newest one. That's not actually open yet.
Okay.
The state park has it on their website. So, but 88 is what I'm going off of.
So what inspired that idea?
I mean, it'd always been something I'd had on my list of, there's a big long list of things I got to get done in my lifetime. So that had been on there. And I'd actually been to probably like 40 or so before I started this.
Oh, wow.
I'm started from scratch. I'm going to do them all in 1 year. That was the goal. But I'd been to, close to half already just over the course of my life. Really what kind of freed me up. So for most of the last like 5 years or so, I've been building and running off-grid campgrounds in West Texas, kind of glamping style campgrounds. So I did my first one out near Big Bend and then my second one near Guadalupe Mountains. And I had sold the Big Bend one early COVID. That was like early 2020 or so. And the Guadalupe Mountains one was probably 2.5, 3 years in, and it just really wasn't like have y'all been out there before?
I have before,
it's it's beautiful area. It's very, very remote. I mean, there was kind of the Terlingua area where my Big Bend place was. There's just a lot more people coming through that area. There's more infrastructure. I was kind of the only thing out there by the Guadalupe Mountains, and just really couldn't get it to the point where I could be fully removed from it and still be growing and doing other things. And so ultimately made the decision this past summer to just kind of close that one down and essentially liquidate. I still have some tents and stuff in storage from there. But yeah, so I kind of found myself this past summer, really, I guess about this time a year ago, all of a sudden, like not tied to these physical locations like I had been. And that freed me up to think about, all right, well, let's get a little creative about what's coming next. And I'd always envisioned content creation and social media being a bigger part of like just things I do, kind of under the John Sorsby umbrella or whatever. And said, what the heck, let's just go hard at this and kind of see what happens.
So when did you officially kick off this trip or, going around all of them?
Yeah. So October 14th is my birthday. So that was the challenge. And the goal was to visit them all from birthday to birthday, basically. So between now and October 14th of 2024, I've got, however many left there are, 36 or so.
How are you tracking? You think you're going to get them in?
Yeah. I'm doing well. I'm about on track. I mean, it's about 7 or 8 a month, to stay on track. And, really the editing and now this has turned into like a business, and that portion and kind of the administrative side takes a lot more time than just physically being at these locations. So
I don't think people realize a lot of the back end work that it takes for social media. And I've seen that you've grown quite a bit. So congrats on the success you've had with it. It feels like you're really, it's really taken off for you, which is awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, I've been pinballing around at different projects and different things for a number of years, and this is the first thing that's gone as well or better than expected. So that's been nice.
Do you stay one night at each location, or how long do you stay at each park?
Really depends. I mean, it's kind of it's when I decided I was going to do that, I kind of, when I choose to do something, I just go really hard at it for like a 6 to 12 month period is kind of what my life has trended towards the last 5 or 10 years. But yeah, so when I decided I was going to do this, I moved out of the place I was living, and I've just been like a traveling nomad for 7, 8 months now. So it's just like, it's a mixture of, staying in cheap hotels sometimes, staying in, camping a little bit. We've got like a family ranch I'll stay at in the Houston area sometimes, parents, sister, friends, Airbnbs. I've started partnering up with like the visitors bureaus for different towns and cities. So sometimes if I'm doing a deal with them, they'll put me up for a few days. So yeah, it's every night is kind of different. And, and sometimes it's just, in the truck in a Walmart parking lot if you have to.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's not, most of it is like day trips to the state parks themselves, I would say. Most of them are within like, an hour of a town or a city. There's not that many that are like incredibly remote, I would say.
Random question: have you run into a bunch of rattlesnakes?
A lot more when I was running campgrounds in West Texas than around the state parks. That was a very common stressor because they were kind of glamping style campgrounds. So I had guests, and I had like at the Big Bend when I had 10 different sites on one piece of land, and then Guadalupe Mountains one had 6. So there were like guests coming and going every day. Mm-hmm. So that was just a like recurring stressor in the back of my mind was somebody stepping on a rattlesnake. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I don't even know if I've seen a rattlesnake since I've been doing this. I don't think so. I've seen a few different kinds of snakes, but
we had one on a job site just the other day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, certainly run into them a bunch in my life. That's really the only thing that, people ask if I get like scared or, nervous being out, especially at night. And, once you start to learn what the sounds are of different animals and stuff, you kind of get used to it. And there's really not that much in Texas that I'd be really concerned about like attacking and killing me,
Mm-hmm. So scorpions and rattlesnakes.
Yeah. And even the scorpion, I mean, like the hill country scorpions, I mean, those little things are, that's like a wasp thing. I feel
like hell.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not looking to get stung, but yeah, stepping on a rattlesnake, that's like the one thing. It's like, man, that'll really put a damper on your day. So
I was hiking the other day and came the closest I ever had to
really?
Stepping on a cottonmouth. I was over at Roy Creek and was on this big rock. I was probably maybe 2 feet in the air, kind of a step down. Mm-hmm. And as I was stepping down, I saw it coil up, but I was already in the movement. So there's nothing I could do. And so I stepped. And I don't know how close I actually was. In my mind, I was like 6 inches. In reality, I might have been a foot or two, but it was back, mouth open, ready to strike. And even just thinking about it now, my hair stands up.
Yeah.
But, for the amount of time I've spent in the outdoors, that's the closest I've ever come. And I've probably only seen, less than 10, venomous snakes. So it's not as common as people think, but I know West Texas, it gets pretty bad. And you had a family ranch. I remember as a kid, there were hundreds of them. I mean, I feel like there's pockets where they get really bad, but for the majority, like around Austin, it's really not.
Yeah, my dad was probably, I think I was in college maybe. My dad got bit by a copperhead out at our ranch when I was out there. And, he was kind of scooping up leaves in the kind of like a fenced-in portion around this little ranch house we've got out there, and basically just scooped it up in his hand and got him on kind of both thumbs. It kind of nicked him.
He got both of his thumbs?
Yeah, I got one better, and it kind of, because he essentially like picked it up almost, and so it kind of scraped both. Like I think the left hand was where it kind of got into him a little bit, and then kind of scraped the right as well. Yeah, so that was wild. Just hear my dad like, Dad, coming! I just got bit by a snake.
You have to go to the hospital. Is he all right?
Yeah, we went. Yeah, it was. He went to the hospital out in Cypress. It's in Waller, where the ranch is at. And stayed a couple of nights. They just kind of hooked him up to IVs and just monitored him. He just, swelled up like crazy. But I guess like anti-venom is, you kind of don't want to use it unless you really have to, I think is the case. It's kind of, I don't know the exact science behind, but I think you're basically putting like poison into your body that counteracts the poison somehow or something.
I hate snakes.
Yeah. So
My last snake story for you is Forrest and I grew up together, and in high school we went out to his family's ranch out in West Texas, which we knew, there's a pretty bad snake problem out there. And we went dove hunting one day. I don't even know if you remember this. And no dove, we're sitting there on a bucket, nothing came by. And so Forrest's like, oh, I'm gonna go off into the tree line. And I don't even know, we just look for snakes or whatever. And a few minutes pass and I hear, oh shit, fuck, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh no. And so I go running over there, like, what's going on? He made it sound terrible. And I come around the corner and he's on all fours, hunched over, and I'm like, I'm freaking out, like something happened, and as soon as I get close, he turns around and he had already cut the head off, but had shot a rattlesnake and just flings it at me and hits me across the neck, and I'm like, oh, throw it off. And it's still squirming, but the head was cut off. And so, that just made me think of that story.
That's the creepiest part of them when you chop a head off and for like hours, they'll still be. Are you from West Texas?
No, I grew up here.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah.
Spent a good amount of time out there.
Yeah, I had some college buddies from out that way. Those West Texas boys, and they just go. That's like, a Friday night is you just go running around like looking for snakes.
Oh yeah.
Pick them up, on the side of the road and stuff. Crazy.
Yeah. So how did you? How are you mapping this out? I mean, do you have a big strategic war map and you're trying to be as efficient as possible, or are you just winging it a bit more than that?
I mean, I certainly always have the Texas State Park map on the website, kind of constantly pulled up. And then I've got a massive Google Doc that I've kind of sorted by region, sort of, or kind of how I think of the closest city or just how I think of these different pockets of the state with what state parks are in there. And then what, I'm also visiting a lot of just historic sites and just interesting places, ghost towns or just interesting little spots that I find along the way as well. And I've done a lot of research on just, uncovering what are those places. So I'll have all those kind of listed out. And then, and now one of the, now I've started doing these kind of partnerships with, I mentioned the Visitors Bureau or the tourism boards essentially of different towns and cities. So, sometimes if I have something like I was just in Port Aransas this past week, and so I also kind of lumped some other spots in before and after that sort of Port A visit. So that's part of it too, is kind of just kind of building these mini 5 to 7 day loops back to, going out and then coming back a little more towards civilization area.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. That you've kind of expanded into doing just other topics, other areas, diving into the history a bit, which is just fascinating. So did you find was that initially the goal, or as your account grew and you've had success with it, that just kind of organically happened?
Yeah, kind of organically. I mean, I've definitely just followed my interests, I would say. For me to do anything really consistently, I have to be into what I'm doing, and so anything I'm doing on video or anything I'm talking about are things I would already want to be doing or already be learning about. Yeah. It's not really, there's, some of the business elements of this feel like a job, and some of the editing can get a little tedious, but a lot of the stuff you see on camera or you hear in the voiceovers, that stuff that's, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. That stuff I enjoy and would want to do anyway. So, the history, I knew I did the first video I put out that got some real traction last summer was I was going to my buddy's house. He kind of lives on the coast in Brazoria County area, and I was driving to his place from probably from San Marcos or Central Texas somewhere, and when I was going through Gonzales, which is a very historic Texas town. That's where the Come and Take It where that all started, a big Texas Revolution town. And I'd made just a couple little outdoorsy videos last summer, and said, what, I'll stop into Gonzales and kind of, I've never really checked the town out. Took some video clips, and then afterwards I kind of put this video together talking about the history of the Come and Take It and all that, and it did really well, and all these, and all of a sudden, all these people were fighting in the comments about it and stuff, which is very, very strange. And but that was when I started saying oh, okay, maybe kind of incorporating the history element into the visual of me at this place in present day, that's kind of a unique combination that I wasn't seeing a ton out there on the internet and thought might work well. So, and that it kind of just evolved from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see a lot of people on social media that it's like, food based, or they show up and it's just like, here, you can come visit this place. And it's no one really focuses on the history too much. And so I think it's awesome that you're doing that. It's been fascinating to follow along. Have you always been a history guy? I mean, has it always been something that was interesting to you, or did that come later in life?
Yeah, a little bit later in life, I think. I was obsessed with sports like all of childhood and into college, and was just always playing sports or watching sports, or I'd have like encyclopedias of I'd be mapping out like the top 10 second basemen for the 1920s
really?
and that kind of stuff. But Texas history was interesting, and grew up watching westerns and stuff with my parents, watching John Wayne's and Clint Eastwood movies and stuff like that. And but I think I was really drawn. Like, I always knew once I came to grips that I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. Like, I always wanted to work for myself in some capacity, and I think I've always been drawn to like the Native American history and the frontier and the Wild West, like all that has always really appealed to me. And I think it's kind of the wildness and the freedom of it. And that's why I still really, really love West Texas and the Big Bend area, because that does still feel like, it feels like a wild place. So I was always drawn to that. And then definitely in the last 10 years, once I started going out on my own, just solo road trips and driving around and driving through these small towns and getting curious about, you drive through these small towns, you see all these like abandoned buildings, and it just gets me wondering like, what's happened here? Who were the people that were here? One thing that's so interesting to me about abandoned buildings, and I love, there's like a haunting beauty to them kind of, but at some point, like, that was somebody's dream, that was building that. I mean, like, y'all are in the building business. At some point, these pools that y'all are building they're
going to be here forever.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going to be, they're going to be abandoned, and like, somebody's going to stumble across these old pools that, in the backyard of some like decaying house and wonder about those people. So that was a lot what kind of led me into just being more and more interested in Texas history. And what I've found too is you grow up in Texas, you kind of learn the big Texas history story. You learn about the Alamo and the Texas Revolution and stuff. But, every single place, once you start looking for it, has interesting stories and has interesting history and has beauty in it too. Once you are thinking about looking for those, it's really easy to find. So that's been cool.
Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to kind of go backwards a little bit. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Houston.
Okay.
So yeah, west side of town. Born and raised there. So yeah, was in the city. I mentioned our ranch. We did have we had a family cattle ranch that was really only 45 minutes or so from the house I grew up. So got to get out there on the weekends a lot, and that was kind of where our my grandfather and all of our extended family, that was kind of the centerpiece of the family. So that was really lucky and grateful to have, to be able to still kind of have that like country element, built into a city life essentially. But yeah, we still would go, like, my sister and I were always playing so many sports. So most of our life was kind of geared around those schedules and stuff. But if we were going to do a little family vacation, it was usually just like a road trip to the hill country, and get a little cabin on the river, or go to the Frio or Wimberley or, Garner State Park, something like that. So that was kind of the first exposure to getting out to some of these parks and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. I know you're bouncing around right now, but where is home for you now?
It's, that's something that's been on the mind a lot the last, I've got an end date of this state park thing, October 14th, and it's coming quick. And, I think Texas-based content will continue to be a part of what I'm doing after that in some capacity. But yeah, it's kind of figuring out right now, like, what do I want my day-to-day life to look look like after this? Where do I want to live? What do I want to focus on? Do I want to keep doing exactly the same thing or tweak it in certain ways? So that's even like actually yesterday I was just sitting there like pondering, okay, do I get up? Because I do think at some point I'll get some more land out in far West Texas somewhere, but I don't really think that I want to live there full time, like 365 days a year. Like I do still enjoy some civilization as well. So I don't know. I may get like San Marcos is kind of I went to Texas State and I've lived in San Marcos off and on, and that probably feels as close to home base as anything at this point. We don't have any family, or my parents are retired and live in the hill country, kind of near Marble Falls. And then my sister and her family are in Midland. So we don't have any of the core group in Houston anymore. So
Yeah, San Marcos is great. I could definitely stay there.
Yeah, I mean it's the river running through. It's definitely a college town, but I think even if you didn't go to Texas State or I still think it's an incredible place to live. I mean, the cost of living is low relatively, and you can walk to a million places, and there's a nice little community there. So yeah, I really like it.
Do you have any thoughts? I know you're still somewhat figuring it out, but doing the same thing you've been doing with national parks, or maybe going to another state, or what's your thought process?
Yeah, that's part of the things I've been weighing. Because you could certainly, a logical next step would be, okay, I did the Texas State parks, now let's go do the national parks, and kind of the same type of thing, but just on a larger scale. And I definitely want to visit all the national parks in my lifetime. I don't think that I'm going to go straight into that though. It's national parks. I mean, that's a whole nother beast. A lot more miles, and most state parks, like you can in a day or in even a half a day, some of them, like you can visit most of the things you'd want to see. National parks, like you need to spend a good chunk of time in each one to really see what they have to offer. And there's remote elements, there's weather elements. I mean, there's 7 or 8 in Alaska, and just being that far away from everybody I know for, however long it would take, 18 to 24 months, something like that, probably. I don't think I want to dive straight into that. I think I may just kind of chip away at them over time.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this glamping West Texas. How did that idea come about, and what's the story? How did all that play out?
Yeah. So most of my I'm 35 now. Most of my 20s was working in just different corporate sales jobs, and but always like trying to scheme something up to get out, and come up with different ideas, and I'd try something and have to go back and get another job. But I graduated from Texas State in 2011, and it was a very different world at that time. I mean, I got my first smartphone like a month before I graduated. And most of the apps and platforms and things that are so common now, like, didn't exist back then. So it was just, as all of those over the course of my 20s started coming out, in Instagram, like the Instagram travel influencer started to become a thing, where like getting, it was like, remember people would fall off mountains getting the selfie all the time. Like that started becoming a thing, and Airbnb started blowing up. So you were just getting exposed to a lot more natural places through your phones, and this idea of like experiential hospitality was becoming a thing where it's like, oh, you don't just have to stay in a hotel, you can stay in this super cool, bubble in Big Bend. And so I started to see those. I was road tripping a lot more and just getting exposed to more areas of the state, and like really falling in love with the Big Bend area of the country. And but really what made me decide I thought I could do it was when I just discovered how cheap land was out there at the time. I mean, it's still cheap compared to the rest of the state. So all those things were kind of like rolling around, 2016, 17, 2018 was when I kind of really started planning for it. And I was like, I think I can just get me a little piece of land out there and go out and work really hard and be able to just kind of throw this thing together myself without having to, go get some sort of like funding or anything. And yeah, and so that's basically what I did. I just started with the Big Bend one was a 5 acre piece of land, and just went out there and yeah, had canvas glamping tents, a couple trailers, a teepee, a couple of these kind of dome tent sort of things, and yeah, and just kind of set up this little camping setup and had some community areas built in and some satellite internet and a solar system and a porta potty. And
Yeah, I was curious how you handled water and sewer and
yeah, I mean,
power and all
it's
that.
you know, part of that area, which makes it easier to set up that sort of thing, is that like if you're going out there, well, for one, you know, I was positioning it alongside the national park. So like if you're going out there, you're in a rugged camping, hiking mindset. That's what you're seeking out. You're not like going just for my place. You know, and I mean, Terlingua area has changed a lot. It's evolved a lot, and there's a ton of development going on in that, you know, houses and casitas and stuff going up out there. But you know, at the time and historically, there just weren't that many options of like having some, you know, there's not like a 5-star hotel in Terlingua that you can just go in and have all the amenities. I mean, it's water access, you know, toilet access, like all those things they're tough out there. So the expectation is a little different. And it was part of Terlingua Ranch, which is a big, like, I don't know, property association kind of thing.
Okay.
So I did have access to some water, and they have like a cafe and some showers and a pool and stuff back at their kind of headquarters. So did have that access, which made it a little easier as
Yeah,
well.
sounds great. So visiting 88 parks in a year, do you feel that they're starting to blend together a little bit, or do you feel like that they each have enough kind of personality to them that they individually stand out to you?
Some of both. I mean, somewhere in between, I feel like. Yeah. You know, there are a lot that are centered around a lake, you know, a kind of a man-made reservoir. That's been one interesting thing too, is that, you know, you hear the thing that you're probably familiar, like Caddo Lake, you know, that's the only natural lake in Texas. I'd always heard that, and didn't really register until I started doing this, that all of these lakes are basically just dams on a river to fill up a reservoir, and most of them flooded some old little small community that used to be there. And that's what a lot of the state parks are built around, especially like DFW area. East Texas, kind of Northeast Texas has a lot like that, where, you know, you've got these kind of fishing lakes with some trails around them. And so some of those kind of can blend a little bit. But hopefully I'd be able, if you asked about one, I'd be able to distinctly remember it.
How did you map out, or do you have like a pattern? Are you doing a big circle, or is it just random getting through all of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's generally it's more like going out and coming back to a more central area, I would say. Like if you look on what I have remaining, I mean, I still have, like, I've got Panhandle, I've still got some stuff in West Texas, I've got Northeast Texas, I've got some stuff in South Texas. I've still got spots remaining all over. So yeah, it hasn't been like just like I'm doing all of South Texas, then I'm going to move to all of Southeast Texas. You know, it hasn't been exactly like that. It's been a little more crisscrossing all over. So.
Are you saving any certain one for the last one?
So actually, my one of my buddies, Jeremy Claff, give him a shout out. His birthday is he the 15th or the 16th? So me and him and one other friend, we have birthdays back to back days, 14th, 15th, 16th. So he's a big he's outdoors, camps, hikes, fishes, and stuff. And so he rented a cab at the Devil's River, one of the Devil's River cabins.
Very cool.
And rented it like for his birthday trip, and like hit me up to see if I wanted to go. And so we're going to be out there the 11th through 14th of October. I was like, oh, that's so perfect, because I can save that for the last one,
yeah.
Which is already, Devil's River and Caddo Lake were the two coming into this that I hadn't been to that I was most looking forward to. So that'll be cool to cap it off with Devil's River.
And down there, I had a friend that just got back from there, but that's is a state natural area, or what is it down there
Yeah,
exactly?
so there's a ton of different classifications that between state, historical, state parks, state natural areas, national forests, national parks, historic sites. There's all these different, but the natural areas like Enchanted Rock is a natural area, Lost Maples is a natural area, Devil's River. There's a handful. Those get lumped into the state park number that's how like Parks and Wildlife, they include them in that number. And there's a natural area. I think it's just like they just have a little less infrastructure than state parks, just a little less geared towards the visitor and a little more geared towards like conservation, I think is essentially the difference.
Have there been any that unexpectedly stood out to you? I mean, is there one that you went to and you weren't expecting it to be very cool and it just blew you away?
Longhorn Cavern is really cool.
I think that's my favorite cave.
Yeah,
right here.
yeah. I don't think. I mean, it's so many people, and especially in Austin, San Antonio corridor, like love to go out to the hill country on the weekends, or and spend time there. And I don't feel like that many people in the Austin area know about Longhorn Cavern being an hour from downtown Austin, something like that, hour and a half. That's really cool. Mineral Wells, that was one where, some of them, usually I'm excited to go to a new park. There are some times where once I get there, I have a good time, but I'm like, oh, I've got to hit the road. I've got all this stuff on my mind. I've got it. But today I said I was going to this park, so I got to go out there. Mineral Wells was one of those where it was expecting just kind of like the lake with a little trail going around the perimeter of the lake, and wasn't really that excited about it. And I got there and there was these super cool sort of like almost slot canyon kind of, and all these like massive, like I love just kind of hopping around I'm not, like I know Grant, I've seen his, I don't know if you've climbed with him at all.
He's a buddy of mine, so he's normally the one producing for us.
Well, yeah,
so,
that's what I was a no offense, but I was I followed Grant for a long time, and so I was like, oh, that'll be cool to get to meet him.
Throw some shade at Grant. He booked this and then double booked apparently, and so thanks Grant for that one. So he was supposed to be here today.
He's been putting out some awesome stuff the last few days too.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember exactly where.
He's coming from Utah, I think, climbing.
Yeah. There was some drone video he had it was crazy looking around this like circular crater. Very cool. But so I'd love to get more into climbing and go out maybe with Grant sometime, go out climbing with somebody that has the right gear and knows what they're doing. But I love just messing around on boulders and and hopping around on rocks and stuff. And Mineral Wells, that had this beautiful, awesome, and they actually they do have like a climbing community that goes out there and climbs there. So that was a really cool one. Hueco Tanks out near El Paso. That's another really cool one.
I haven't even heard of that one before. I don't think. Yeah,
they do. They cap the number of people every day at like 300 or something. And so it's pretty. There's not because they have a bunch of like native cave drawings and stuff out there, and there's I forget, there's some sort of conservation element that they're. So they really limit the number of people, and it's a long way away from the rest of the state.
Yeah. But. What's your process when you go into a new park? Figuring out the history, or how do you get your story together? I mean, have you kind of got a system down at this point?
I mean, there's an element of research ahead of time. Not as much for the parks, because the parks, I know I have to hit all these parks. I know where they are. There's certainly probably more research that goes into towns and like, are there some other interesting things around these parks, that I can work, kind of visit during one of these trips. The parks, I mean, I do a little bit of research ahead of time and then, check in, talk to the park rangers, get the park maps, kind of check those out. But I don't have like an exact plan necessarily going in. And then I just kind of pick up things, whether it's a park or somewhere else. I pick up things from talking to people along the way, reading stuff, learning stuff, and slowly I start to get an idea of what the story might be and how do you condense the entire history of a place into a 90-second story that people find interesting. And then really afterwards, I sit down at the computer and, open up like 30 tabs and start, reading all this different stuff and copying and pasting into a Google Doc and sort of slowly condensing and finding a common thread, through history that I can weave into a 90-second story. But it's definitely a process to get it down to that. And even like, it has to be the exact right length, so sometimes I might start and I think, oh, I've got the perfect script written out, and it's like, oh, dang it, it's 78 seconds or it's 102 seconds, so I need to read, go tweak things. But
we've done a good job of telling these stories. Obviously, you've been getting the traction from it, which is wonderful. So people are definitely enjoying it. So you've been doing a great job with it, I'll tell you that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think the story element has definitely been, I think, what's caused the videos to do well and for people to find them interesting. And I've had so many people that have commented and messaged at all these different places. Like, I've lived here my whole life and I didn't know that part of our history, so that's been a cool, gratifying element of doing all this.
Have there been any stories along the way, like history things that you've learned that just blew you away? I mean, top story or top history fact? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Man. Well, all these flooded ghost towns have been really interesting to learn about, and they're like practically every lake in the state, there's an old town at the bottom of it. One of my favorite videos to make and did pretty well in terms of like reach and stuff and feedback was about Bluffton, which is a town at the bottom of Lake Buchanan that in the waters started, that when they formed the lake, put a dam on the Colorado River, dammed it up, flooded the surrounding area, and there's a little small community of Bluffton, and they knew it was coming and everything. They didn't nobody died, but but this little community, got flooded and they had to move. They moved the town like 5 miles west, and the water was so low earlier this year that the ruins of the town reemerged after being underwater for 70, 80 years, something like that. And so I knew like the general vicinity it was, but I didn't know exactly where I was going or exactly what I was looking for, and just kind of set off like hiking, looking until I found a sign of an old town. And so that was really fun, and that's always interesting to learn about. There's a Valken Lake is a state park south of Laredo on the border, and they similar situation there where the reservoir on the Rio Grande flooded the town, and so there was a town on the U.S. side and a town on the Mexico side. And the U.S. side they kind of leveled all the buildings before the lake flooded it, but on the Mexico side they kind of just left everything standing there. And so as the lake goes up and down, there's this old church in Valken Lake that will, like the steeple will will poke out, and if it's really low, you can drive your boat inside this church. So all these people will go like fish, underneath this old church on Valken Lake. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I didn't realize how common that was. I know on Lake Travis, there's a town at the bottom of that one, and I know it's a popular scuba diving spot for folks, but I had no idea that it was across Texas like that.
I mean, it's crazy. It's like every new lake I go to, I learn about, and sometimes I won't even learn about it till after I put a video out, because it just won't really be in the written history that I find online. And then somebody will comment like, oh yeah, there's a, whatever town used to be down there. My grandma lived there or something. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Do you have a favorite state park so far?
Man, I get that question all the time, and I still haven't really come up with a good answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not through them all yet. I would say the Big Bend region I'm pretty comfortable saying that's like my favorite region of the state to go visit. And they do have the state park there. So, I mean, you could kind of say that I've spent more time in the national park. I haven't gone into like the backcountry of the state park, which is, I don't know if y'all have ever been to the state park, but that's like, there's a drive from Presidio to Lajitas that borders the Rio Grande through the state park. That's like, it's the coolest drive in the state, I think. And it's, you're just like going up and down these mountains and weaving and in and out, just following the river the whole time. And so there's some really cool hikes alongside that, but most of the Big Bend Ranch State Park is backcountry, where, you gotta, take a, pack and overnight camp and get a backcountry permit and everything. So, but yeah, I would say Big Bend, favorite area. I don't know for sure what my favorite state park yet is though.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll get that question a lot as you go to wrap it up. So
yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about Caddo Lake. I'm going out there. So I'm doing a thing with the city of Longview in June, and I'm going to go out to Caddo Lake during that. So that's one I've been seeing for years and years, and I'm definitely excited to check that out.
I know there's some cool boat tours and stuff you can do out there.
Yeah, I definitely want to take a kayak or canoe out or something, and probably try and get out real early in the morning. I always see that seems like the fog and so during summer it may not be as good, but yeah, I'm definitely pumped to get to that one.
So what's your connection with Texas Hill Country Provisions? I got connected with those guys a while back, and really neat company, and their merchandise, you can tell they just really put a lot of effort into it. And so how'd that relationship
Yeah, they
come
were
about?
I love these guys. I mean, they were the first company to reach out and partner up with very early on. Like they, so Madison and Chris are the two founders there. And Madison, his folks have a place in West Texas, and I think he maybe had followed me for a while from when I had my campgrounds out there. He was like loosely familiar of who I was, I think, and I was familiar with him from previous companies he had. And so yeah, when he saw that I put out this thing, like I'm visiting all the state parks in a year, he saw that video and just messaged me and was like, hey man, like, love what you're doing. You want to come in and talk? I think our companies and what you're doing are very like aligned. And I thought they were a super cool company since they started basically a few years ago anyway. And yeah, it's been awesome. So super grateful for them for. And that also helped too, is like, okay, there's, maybe I can partner with companies and actually like figure out a way to make money from this while I'm also doing exactly what I want to be doing anyway. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you'll get more and more of them. So you've got Texas Hill Country Provisions, and you're also working with Rambler, I believe.
Yeah. When I, the first I guess you'd probably posted about it, cause I know I'd followed you on Instagram, and when y'all had Dave Mead in here from Rambler. And I was familiar with Rambler prior to that, but y'all put that episode out like a day or two before I was going to go meet with Dave at Rambler for the first time. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I got all Dave's backstory, the Rambler backstory, and just this nice video for me before I went into that meeting. But yeah, they've been awesome too. I mean, both of these companies, like, Texas-based companies, cool companies, like they support the same things I do. They're into the same things I do. So yeah, those are awesome ones that feel like true partnerships. Don't feel like a sponsor. You know what I mean? So yeah, they've been awesome.
That's really neat too. They've been getting connected with different tourism boards basically across the different cities. I think that's a really neat aspect, and I guess from the business end, probably very helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of there's a few different like types of, partnerships or ad deals or whatever you want to call them. Kind of the product-based ones, whether it's, showing Rambler in videos or wearing, THC Provisions gear. But the sort of the Visitors Bureau ones, because these, like, it's hard for me to, like, I have no idea if it's worth it to those companies from just purely like a business X's and O's standpoint. Hopefully it is. I mean, I hope I'm giving value to them like they're giving to me. But definitely for these visitor centers, like I think of, they're basically the marketing arms of these local governments essentially that are trying to promote tourism for their, to their town or their city. So they have budgets that they're spending somewhere, whether it's an ad in Texas Highways Magazine or a billboard on the side of the road or putting some of that towards somebody like me. And I do feel good that whatever portion of that budget they put towards me to create interesting, cool videos around their location that's going to expose a whole lot of new people to interesting things about that place. Like I do feel like they're getting good value from that, from those partnerships. Absolutely. So, and it's super fun as well, getting to, put a little more focused energy about like learning about everything there is to learn about those different places.
I want to hear more about that castle you visited, like that
Yeah.
dude who built the castle. I watched the video, but will you just tell us that story? It sounds like such an incredible place.
Well, and so actually, it turns out the guy that built it, I've started in a month or two ago, I started seeing comments that he actually passed away.
Oh no.
A few months ago. So I don't know. Trying to remember, Mike Newman, I believe was his name. So yeah, it's sad to hear that because he was there. I met him very briefly when I was there on the tour. But yeah, I mean, trying to remember. So it's in the Belleville area, and Mike I want to say he had spent some time living in Europe when he was young, like early 20s or something, and saw some of these castles around Europe and was like, man, that's super cool, and basically decided he wanted to build himself a castle at some point. And he owned a bakery in Belleville and got this little piece of land a few miles outside of town, and just slowly over, the course of 10 or 15 years maybe, built this castle, basically just kind of like out of cinder blocks that, I don't know, I'm not a builder, but concreted them together somehow, and then kind of like plastered over that to make it look a little more like a castle, I think.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was super cool. And those are my favorite types of places that are just like big, physical, artistic creations that probably the entire time he was building that, or anybody would be building something similar, like everyone was like, what the heck are you doing? And just thinking you're crazy. And you do have to be a little crazy, to just undertake something like that and put so much time and energy and money into it with like really no exact payoff at the end, and but yeah, those are very inspiring to me. Like, if you decide to, you can just go build a castle, and like if you decide that's what you want to spend a chunk of your life doing, it's possible. So
what was the inside like?
Looked like a castle.
It was just
I mean, he lived there. It was his like permanent residence. So he had this kind of kooky old guy that did the tours. That he was like the perfect kind of crazy old man to lead a tour at a homemade castle. But yeah, he told us, he was like, yeah, if Mike's if he leaves the door open or something, that means that you can go tour his bedroom. If the door's closed, you can't go in there. And yeah, so we like walked into his bedroom, like into his bathroom and everything. And I mean, the whole thing looks like a castle.
Like the furniture, everything down.
Everything, the kitchen. There's this big kind of kitchen area that it all looks. There's running water and lights and modern appliances and stuff, but it's all it just all blends in to fit perfectly. And
Wow.
Very, very cool.
That's cool. He was living there and still doing the tours like that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, he didn't. I mean, he emerged at one point. He was kind of just like drinking a cup of coffee, and we were walking by. Just like, hey, Mike. But
He probably gets such enjoyment though out of people coming to check out his castle. He spent all that time building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember how much the tour was. I mean, some money was coming in from it. I mean, I don't know that he was making bank from doing the tours there or anything, but yeah, that was one of my favorite spots for sure.
Very cool. Well, what else have we missed? Anything else that has stood out to you from your journey so far?
Let's see. Well, one thing, I know with you, so I see so many cool river and streams and different spots that you showcase on your account. Mm-hmm. And, we have gotten a lot of rain the last month across the state, but one thing I've just noticed, I don't know a ton about like the science of the rivers and what causes the changes in levels and that sort of thing. But I know just what I've seen with my eyes that like every lake and river across the state had been significantly lower than any one that I'd, if it was one that I was coming to for the second time, like across the board, every single one, no matter the part of the state, was lower than when I'd seen it previously. So that's definitely been something, once you see that enough times, it starts to stick out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, how much of that is just the population of Texas or And certainly like the Rio Grande, you're also sharing that with Mexico, and how much of that is just coincidence of having drought at the time when I'm going around visiting all these places. But that's definitely been something that's stuck with me a little bit. So I don't know if that's not exactly a question, but
it's been interesting for me, growing up in the area, the whole water situation, I didn't really pay much attention to until recent years. But yeah, it's pretty scary when you really start to understand it and see what's going on. And, obviously we've been in a terrible drought, so that's a huge portion of it, but just the population growth, the amount of straws that we have sucking water out. You'll hear stories of people in the hill country with wells that are going dry left and right. And so, there's only so much water, and you put the population growth that we've had mixed with the terrible drought, and that's what you get. I mean, and like you said, almost everything across the board is low. I mean, you can look at Lake Travis right now. It's just terrible.
Yeah, you don't really, unless it's like a personal sort of, passion of yours, or your career, like you just turn the faucet on. You don't think that much about water. You hear about drought, and some, you'll hear, the neighborhood's gotta, you gotta limit your water, but yeah, traveling around the state and just seeing it with your own eyes, and having everybody you meet and so many comments about how it's so low. Somebody will see a video I made of some river, some lake that maybe they haven't been there in 10 years, and they're like shocked at what it looks like compared to what they remember it as. So seeing that over and over again has been eye-opening for sure.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people it takes, a moment like that, or to see something, or their favorite lake going low, and it finally starts to click. I remember one time I always heard that Cedar Park gets all of their water from Lake Travis. And for a long time that's where it stayed in my mind, but it's different when you're actually on the lake and you see the big intake floating dock with the huge pipe, literally giant straw just sucking the water out. And that's a very different kind of feeling when you see that. It's like, oh wow, we really are just sucking water out of this lake for all of these people, and it starts to kind of get your wheels turning a bit for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And and I'm sure there's some, hopefully some really smart people out there, studying and putting plans in place for those things. But it seems like something that the average person just, unless you've gone all over like I have been lucky enough to do, like you just wouldn't be able to have a good grasp of it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, John. I don't know, is there anything else we want to touch on while we have you here?
Well, what are y'all's favorite spots around the state?
Here locally, I'm a big fan of Pedernales Falls State Park and Colorado Bend. I mean, those are kind of my go-to.
I went to Colorado Bend for the first time. That had been one, like, I kind of had a handful. I mean, I mentioned Caddo Lake and Devil's River, but Colorado Bend had been one that I'd kind of had in my mind, like one that I hadn't been to yet that was definitely looking forward to. And just a couple weeks ago, I went for the first time. I just did I hiked to the tie slide overlook, I think.
Okay, yep.
And then just down to the Gorman Falls. So there's still a lot more of the park that I haven't seen yet, but oh man, awesome. Yeah,
did you just hit
spot.
Gorman and then one overlook?
Yeah.
Oh, so you got to get down on
it was just like a, afternoon basically.
Gotcha.
But so I didn't do the, go to the spring. I mean, I definitely would like to go back and camp and stay a night or two there. And
you've got to hit Spicewood Springs Trail down at the south end of the park. It's that's probably one of my favorite trails. Cool little swimming hole and all that.
Yeah.
Another place I've seen the water moccasin is on that trail.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It was good timing because it had just rained, maybe the previous day or maybe even that morning there. So the fall, everything was very lush and the falls were falling, but it was super slippery. Like I was trying to go down, right to the river, and I mean, I almost slid into the river, but that's fun. I like, getting a little messy. But.
Enchanted Rock was always a favorite for me as a kid. And
that was yeah, I mean, that's just such a striking place.
You've been through the caves from the top that take you down.
I actually haven't been into the caves. I need to, and I haven't gone. That's still on my list of as part of. I mean, I've been a bunch of times in my life, but I haven't done it, officially on this the year of state parks.
Okay, so have that one left.
But so yeah, I'll have to check out the caves. But yeah, that's such a great spot to go to as a kid, because it's, that's gonna, if that doesn't inspire you get outside a little more, like I don't know what's going to.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love all the little pools at the top up there. It's neat. I had the opportunity, it's probably been a couple of years now, but to fly around it, and we just kind of buzzed it. So I think we were at like 700-800 feet above the ground and just kind of buzzed around right at sunset.
That's
and
awesome.
That was really cool just to see it from there like that.
So another guest y'all had on, JB Sauceda, has been one that, and he's been somebody I've looked to for a while, and definitely more so now, because there's not like for this thing I'm doing, whatever this career is, there's not a whole lot of models to to look at, but JB is started Texas Humor, and he's had the book. I had his book of from flying around the perimeter of Texas, and he had these aerial photographs of all across around the perimeter, and now he's doing the show. So he's had I look at some of those guys like Chet, the day tripper guy, who I've never met either of them, but have a number of different things kind of under this Texas umbrella. And I kind of look at those guys as not that I want to try and have a TV show, but just as like, because it does feel a little weird right now that my entire livelihood is solely reliant on like algorithms and convincing brands to like pay me money to advertise, essentially. That's feels like a little bit of a vulnerable place to be in. So I think, and just from my interest, I've got a lot of interest in a lot of different things that I'd like to do. And so looking at those guys is, kind of diversifying underneath this sort of Texas umbrella. So that was was a cool one that I watched that episode. It was cool to see, and cool to see what he's going to do with the show as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how all that plays out. Excited to see what you get into next. I'll be watching as you wrap up the state parks, but do you have any other, what's left on your bucket list if you feel like sharing? Are there any other big ideas that you have related to Texas or not?
I don't know if I'll ever do it, but walking the perimeter of hiking it, that is something that like it keeps creeping into my head, and I almost like want to fight it off because that's
that's intense.
Yeah, I mean, it's walking the perimeter is like that's farther than walking across the country, and
interesting.
when you stretch it all out, and I've only seen I know at least one guy like 10 years ago did it. There's been a couple, maybe a couple people do it because JB flew it and people have driven it, but and if my mom listens to this, she'll probably hate that idea. But
we had a friend walk the Texas coastline.
I saw that y'all had them on.
Jay and
that's
Chrissy.
super cool. So I don't know. I mean, it's such a massive state. I mean, there's so many. Even after I get to every state park, like there's so many things. I mean, I've got a massive list, and I'm always. I mean, I get so many messages from people that have these really cool recommendations on, kind of secret spots in their area that may not even be on the internet anywhere, that you may not know about. Not necessarily like secret trails, but just interesting stories, interesting bits of history that you can only know through passing it on orally, from one person to the next. So yeah, there's tons to do.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we'll be watching. How can people get a hold of you?
Instagram, TikTok, that's where I'm putting everything out. Instagram especially is where I spend the most time. J Sorsby, for JSORSBY. That's the handle. And so, yeah, I would say start there. Anything that I ever do will certainly be going through the Instagram. So.
Yeah, very cool. Well, if any big brands happen to listen to this podcast, get this man some money. I want the content to keep going.
I appreciate it.
More adventures.
Thank you.
So, cool. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.